It's unconfirmed at the moment, but I just spoke to senior Palestinian officials in Jenin who confirmed to me the massive deployment of the IDF around Jenin in case the prisoners try to cross to Jenin or learned about any crossing to Jenin. Yesterday, Kugat has warned that today they left the siege that was posed on the West Bank since the beginning of the Jewish holidays. So they said they will search for the returning workers from Israel to the West Bank to avoid that the two prisoners will come back to the West Bank through them. So no one knows about it, but there is a status of tension and monitoring and watching what's happened with the other two prisoners who still escaped after the capture of the four others who escaped last week.
Now, we saw quite a few demonstrations across the West Bank in support of the prisoners. They were named freedom fighters, and that is often the case with conflict. One side's terrorists is another side's freedom fighters. How do you see them?
The Palestinian people think the prisoners issue is a sacrificed issue because no single house in the West Bank hasn't prisoners even now or in the past 50 years of the Israeli occupation of the West Bank and Gaza. So they sympathize with those prisoners because there is no negotiations between the Palestinian Authority and Israel or no prisoner swap between Hamas and Israel to free them. So they thought that the only way that they free themselves through the tunnel, as we saw last week, there is a lot of sympathy and support and solidarity with the prisoners, and the Palestinians also angry because Israel has killed the other prisoners in other Israeli jails following the managed and the success of the escape attempt last week. So they prepared for more solidarity activities and keep following what's happened recently, but also at the same time that the Israeli security arrested them with no clashes, with no violence, make the reaction reduced and more quiet and more controlled. Even if they were injured or killed during their arrest, then the reaction of the Palestinian state could be more violent.
And again, Mohammed Najib, we're seeing the partisanship between the Palestinians in the West Bank and the Arab Israelis within Israel, as we're hearing a lot of criticism from Palestinians in the West Bank about how Arab Israelis in the north of Israel aided the police forces in capturing or reported the fugitives that were seen by citizens from the Arab sector. That puts, again, the Arab Israelis in that position of being very much in the middle.
Yes, it happened Friday night and Saturday morning when Israel has managed to arrest the four escaped prisoners, and social media were filled of these issues. But the Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Fatah and the Palestinian groups confirmed in statements that they don't accuse the Israeli Arabs of reporting to the Israeli police to arrest them. And we saw also the families who were accused issued a statement, said they were not involved in any kind of this issue. So I think it's a matter of time, but the relation will be fixed because the Palestinians in the West Bank feel that the Palestinians in Israel are the same community and part of them. So it couldn't have effect for a long time. It happened just for the first 24 to 48 hours of the issue.